All right, the dancing ends now. First of all, an incredible thank you to Robin Schwartz for the central force organizing the Spring Rites. How many years has Spring Rites been?
16.
16 years.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I have some experience organizing these kinds of events, reading series, poetry series, festivals and stuff like that. And I know very deep in my heart all of everything that goes wrong, everything that goes right, everything that's just like, you know, it's a tightrope, and even when it's over and you think you can get some sleep, then you have to like fill out all the forms like justifying what you just did, and then the forms for next year's events. So it's an endless, and I don't want to say a thankless effort, because we want to thank you very much for that.
I wanted to say that as someone who organizes events, you've had the same experience. You forget when you're in the minutia of microphones, projectors, schedule. You forget that at the end of my rope, there's going to be some amazing events where you could sit and be filled up again with joy. So thank you.
Thank you. Last year at the Ithaca is Books Festival, that was organized by Buffalo Street Books and Odyssey Books and a number of other parties as well. I was at the local authors event, and it just sort of occurred to me, it was sort of strange, that there was all these people at the event, and we were all published by the same press, Finishing Line Press, which is a press, they do publish fiction, but it's primarily a poetry press out of Georgetown, Kentucky. And they put together beautiful books, beautiful chapbooks, and it was just sort of like, wait a second, how is it that we're all published by the same press? And that was sort of the inspiration. You know, why don't we have a reading featuring people from the same press? We all have different visions and different aesthetics, but there are some commonalities too, I think. And so that was sort of the impetus. And so initially we had a reading featuring Jillian Barnett and Wren Tuatha and myself. And then Tish Pearlman's book just came out, or it came out in the interstitial period. And so we have to bring Tish into this as well and celebrate her publication as well. So that is the impetus behind this group reading, and everybody's just such a fine poet, which is also the impetus behind all of this group reading. So what I would like to do is begin by introducing Jillian Barnett, who will be sharing her work with us.
This is so great to see all these people. I'm so excited that you're all here. So I started thinking about the fact that we're all with the same press, and that we all have these little chapbooks from Finishing Line, and what it takes to put a grouping of poetry together that makes sense. And how many writers are here? Writers? Karen, you're a writer. Yeah, so you know, you can't just kind of put all your best ones in a row and call it a day. They have to kind of speak to one another. And they have to speak to one another in ways that bring out the best in each of them. So I started thinking about themes, and consequently, I'm not reading from my book today. I will read two poems, well, actually one poem and one creative nonfiction piece that's a flash piece, but I think flash pieces are so much like poetry. They feel so chiseled to me, which is what makes them so hard to create. But yeah, so I started thinking about themes, and I have two heart pieces. The first one is a poem, and the second one is creative nonfiction. So This poem is called Premature. It appeared in Literary Mama a while back. Premature. My daughter was born too soon, too small. A valve in her heart flopped like a broken wing, and sometimes her heart forgot to beat. I watched her on her warming bed, tubes everywhere, monitors glued to her fishbone chest, her breath quick, as if she'd run to me from far away. I curled her fingers around my one, studied her small face, a brand new country. I brought her home on a monitor, a metal shoebox with blinking lights, learned to press the wire leads beneath her tiny nipple, to love the blinking green of her heartbeat. Once the alarm squeal propelled me to her crib, a loose lead and her wailing from the noise. For weeks, I lived inside that sound. This year, she spits contempt and slams her bedroom door. I want to take her in my hands, undo her, break her into parts and reassemble them. I can't offer her my breast as I would a baby, but part of me, my hand held out to the dark red shadows of her heart, I cannot see. Did I forget to tell her when they lifted her from me, she was a starfish, arms and legs splayed out, how frightened I was of her small heart. This little brevity piece is due to appear in brevity in, I think they said August or September. I'm not sure when it comes out. So you guys are hearing it first. It's called Whole. The afternoon my husband left me, I collapsed on the floor in a fetal position, my face at the level of the birds on our stone patio. Through the sliding glass door, I watched juncos, sparrows, and chickadees alight to peck at seeds, jostle one another, then fly away. Over and over, they came and went as the sky darkened, then got lighter and darkened again. There was an intimacy in it, me unmoving, thus unnoticed, my face behind the glass, inches from their iridescent feathers. I didn't care what happened to me anymore. My heart was a deep pain, heavy in my chest. I assumed I wouldn't need to kill myself. Surely I would die there. The heart pain lasted for months as I came to understand my grief as a stand-in for my adoption grief, having been abandoned at birth. Once I processed childhood feelings, my chest was dotted with tiny windows. Light poured in. I'd now experienced what I spent my entire life trying to avoid feeling, being left by the person I most loved. And I had survived. Nothing could harm me now. Fear fled. I couldn't find it anywhere. I couldn't even find fear later that same year when I was diagnosed with breast cancer for a second time, worse than the first, and started treatment the week I entered a rigorous doctoral program. The same week my son, a Marine, went to war in Afghanistan. Friends commented about how hard that must be, all those events at once. They felt sorry for me, having to start each stressful day at the hospital, receiving radiation before going to class. They worried I was alone, my grown children living distant, no husband. They assumed I was afraid, I was ashamed to tell them how much I loved it. The kind nurses who made me feel cared for, how seated in the waiting area in my flimsy gown, I filled with anticipation, wondering which mother nurse I would get that day. Looking forward to their kind voices and gentle hands guiding me onto the radiation table, the way they asked me small questions about my life. My adoptive mother and father wintered in Florida, and after I told them about the cancer, they promptly forgot. Not because of memory issues, but because my illness had nothing to do with them, didn't affect their lives, and that was fine. There was no lack of care for me in the world. On the contrary, I felt the universe open to hold me securely against its breast. A few weeks into radiation, when exhaustion hit, I slept on and off during the day like an infant, secure in being held. Friends brought food and checked on me often. One college friend sent a box of 21 separately wrapped gifts so I could open one each day. Something, she said, to make it easier to get out of bed in the morning when I wasn't feeling well. A set of chattering teeth made me laugh so hard I spit coffee all over the kitchen table. The worst of my cancer was found deep in my chest wall, so deep it couldn't be biopsied with a needle prior to surgery. The doctor knew it was malignant only after he removed it. The radiation, too, had to travel deep into my chest. When I recovered, I ran more slowly and sometimes gasped for air. I told my doctor my heart felt old, like maybe the radiation had damaged it. He ordered a bubble study in which an agitated solution is injected into a vein in the arm and allowed to travel to the heart. I lay on the treatment table in dim light and watched on an echocardiogram screen the bubbles as they arrived in my right atrium like a flock of white birds, dark against dark sky, then migrated to the left atrium through a hole in my heart, a hole that shouldn't be there. The test was positive, said my doctor. The radiation may have widened and hardened a previously small, unnoticeable hole in your heart. He said I was born with it, this hole. I'd just not been able to feel it before. Of course, I was born with a hole in my heart, I thought. Of course, I couldn't feel it before. Available in the back. And keeping with the heart theme, Tish is up next.
Tish, if you could use the mic.
Yeah, I'm going to. I had a hard time hearing. Hello. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay. But now I have to be able to read while I lean into it. Hang on. Let's figure that out. Okay, I can do this way. Okay, so many of you probably, well, I don't know why you would, but my book that I just published is about my surviving a heart attack when I was 64, which was about 6 years ago. And I wrote when I came to enough, we looked through my journal and we found all these poems that I'd written right before the heart attack. And one was written the morning of the heart attack, which happened at 6 that night. And the rest of them I started writing soon after I was able to, come to. It was quite a massive heart attack and I was out of it for a long, long time. So I will begin with that poem we found in my journal the morning before the heart attack. It's called Fading Light. It could come from pale blue sky, the end, I mean. You ache to know what you were meant to live for. The truth rarely unfolds like a scroll, perhaps for those who shun the world and are God-bound. The child longs only to live, but it is never enough. Accept gifts. Is breath a gift? Is fear? We just can't figure out which star is ours. Discover your inhale and exhale as a song. It creates a melody. Face it, you have been cast out like the blue moon, beautiful, fleeting, and unnoticed until you locate the heart. That could have been the last poem I ever wrote. And this was another one right before the heart attack. It was probably about 6 months. It's called Forced Entry. The afternoon when I was born did not last long. Granted, it was very close to the longest day of the year. The Rosenbergs' executed bodies were not yet cool. The war in Korea. My first ride may have been in a Ford flying down Highway 1. The ocean right there, now in my blood. They tried to communicate by calling me a name I could not fathom, Patricia. That must have silenced me. When you learn to walk, are you heading away or toward? I was tiny when I arrived. Maybe because I could hide easily, I found a loud voice. I don't have to practice being a human being. You just start by moving into the distance. Just a couple more. This was another one that was written right before the heart attack. It's called Circling a Meditation. And if I should die while fully awake, will I then become the dream? And if I should awaken in my last breath, will I then become the spirit? And if I am stilled in my world black as black, will I still meet the distant stars? And if I should find in this new land the meaning, the answers, the truest reasons for why I walk the earth, will there be not a soul to tell? And if I should return as a radiant, recognizable self, beginning all over again, shall I set out early for the road that never ends? Okay, I'll read a couple that I wrote right after the heart attack. This one's called Requiem. There is no such thing as a return from near death. I am changed beyond recognition, inside where life began. I am no longer a viable human being, but a ghost in the world. I sit and I wait for the hour of the dying heart, when the energy of a lifetime meets again with the sea. I'm from Southern California, so there's lots of mention of the sea in my consciousness and in my poetry. So I'll read this one last one here. It's called Singing, written a few months before the heart attack. I will go quietly when I retreat, as all drift from my last words. I will not make a sound. Everything has been spoken. Now it must be reconfigured as memory. When did I last swim the Pacific? I will go back. I will go back. There is such a beautiful song along the shores of my dying body. Thank you. Thank you.
That was gorgeous. Thank you. So, the curse of height. So I thought maybe I'd share a couple of poems from the chapbook, witness report, which is, Jillian had talked about, how do you pull these things together? And I suppose directly and indirectly, every poem is a kind of a witness, so every poem is a kind of witness report, which is like basically, that means anything could go in here because it just falls into that category. So the title poem, this is my most Ithaca poem. You might recognize the gas station. Witness report. You couldn't tell distress in the duck's face, not from the distance we watched it. Maybe in her gait, or in the rapid turn of her head with the traffic whizzing past. Certainly, the raft of ducklings strung in a line, then rushing in behind her, showed, at the very least, confusion. The duck hopped a granite curb the ducklings couldn't leap. It seemed a storybook tragedy was playing out before us. A man tried herding them to the sidewalk, waving off cars that slowed and fortunately didn't wreck. When the ducks turned back across the road, we knew the resulting mess would form the stories the dozen of us watching helplessly from the gas station pumps might tell our friends that night at dinner or over drinks. We're a sentimental town. But all the lights were with them. A woman lifted duckling after duckling from the blacktop to the grass, where the duck and her brood regrouped and could safely wander to their certain deaths sometime off in the future. And so, one by one, we all drive off with a great appreciation of just what kind of world we have made. I have a tendency, so sometimes poems are, that kind of experiential, but I have this tendency to write poems that are kind of like weird comedy, historical, not history, but it could be history, so why not? Sort of faux history poems. And this one is called The Ornery Orrery. So, does anybody not know what an orrery is? It's a model of the universe, a model of the solar system that was sort of created in the 17th century, and they were big for a while. There's some great paintings of orreries. So this is called the Ornery Orrery. Egad, cried Machiavelli, this orrery is stuck. The planets don't align. Now how will I predict the rise and fall of kings, the comings and goings of plagues, and on which horse God wills me to place my ducats? Leonardo, with an eye toward the mechanical, squinted at the marvelous machine. Its wheels and gorgeously engraved discs, its metal spheres perched on sticks. He tried its brass gears, tightened and loosened screws, worried the crank. He recognized the problem at once. Fool, he cried, popping the flat-topped cap off the Florentine's head. Don't you see? This machine can't even exist. We live in a geocentric universe. This heliocentric universe won't be confirmed for 150 years. He relabeled the celestial objects, and the truth came perfectly clear. Besides, your dripping candle jammed it here. He flicked a plug of wax off with his knife, turned the crank, and set the future in motion. The wheels turned freely. Planets spun their orbits. Eclipses came and went. Fruits tumbled from their branches. Princes became obsolete while the sun stayed firmly in place. I see, the master statesman murmured, astounded, as his world fell to ruin before his eyes like clockwork. Maybe one more from this book, and then I have a couple of more recent poems to share. This is called Dharma, and it's a poem that got I got very interested in the idea that our bodies contain more DNA that is not us than is us, because we're filled with bacteria and mites and things that aren't us. And it's sort of, what a great idea, you know. After all, if I'm not me, then who am I? So it's Dharma. I am I because a little worm bites me. I am I filled with eyes and eyes watching what happens next. I am a host. I am inhabited. I am a whole world colonized. A body embodied, bodies burrowed in my pores, my hair, my lungs, my eyes. Whose bodies are born forth when I strut? Whose being breathes each deep, sweet breath? When I inhale, whose lungs fill with air? Do I walk, or am I conducted? What DNA varies my mind when I turn on the TV? When I sip a beer, what yeast's thirst does my deep drink slake? I am a host. I am inhabited. I'm a whole ecosystem, complete with theology unraveled. The DNA thread more not me than me, strung like a lyre. Let the wind strum sing my song. I sing the body organic. I sing the matter inside me. Am I its God, going about my business, tending the infrastructure, nerves, veins, capillaries, pores, conducting all beings to the spaces they visit? Domodorix follicorum skitters on a follicle, doing its mite dance, setting its teeth in an old dried flake of skin. There's one now, leaning on an eyelash, waiting for its mate in the blood-lit night. Lactobacillus, soft blankets, smooth as new snow, churning its germs, sweetening the milk I drink. Enterobacteriacoa, my probiotic protectors, beating back all that salmonella that would make me sick. H. pylori, pissed off and mean, burning holes in my gut just for the fun of it. I don't know what I am or what to make of me now. Mitochondria shuffle the deck. I'm a virus on the planet. I'm a planet for a mite, a forest of invisible fauna, each with its claim on me. Cell lines, whole families speaking their chemical language, cultures, whole civilizations. I am Mahayana, greater vehicle, impacting a million lifetimes karma each time I cough. Pediculus humanus cactus. Do you ever wonder what you are? You turn your monstrous pinpoint face undaunted by any existential doubt and plunge unflinching your teeth deep into my dermis. My blood belonging to me as good belongs to you. Worms in my stomach, worms in my eye, worms in my brain. I contain multitudes. I am giving up the ghost. I am a ghost hosting worm ghosts in all my relations, a dot in the universe expanding in space, expanding and waiting to collide with whatever come what may. See me expand, watch me grow. Big bang. So presumably these are all poems that are part of my new book, but that book is yet to come out. So, these are, I'll read maybe 3 of these and then hand the microphone over to Ren. So this poem is Snake Plant. It has an element of truth in it. My daughter, when she was in high school, went on a camping trip, a rock climbing trip with her class, and on the last day was bitten by a copperhead. And so that was trauma for all concerned. But that's just part of it. Snake plant. That potted snake plant looks nothing like a snake. It's a wide, flat ribbon that ends in a point. Maybe a snake flattened by traffic on some desert road, But no snake I know sticks head first in the dirt like a signpost, though I've seen one slip quickly down a hole between two rocks in my garden. And no snake I know is so cardboard stiff or pale green or white rimmed, though I've seen dark green snakes with yellow racing stripes. And wouldn't it be cool to see a snake racing in helmet and goggles, buckled into a Formula One, tongue flicked for a thumbs up, tear around the track, because snakes are fast, a wrinkle in the grass, but often they freeze when cautious. The snake that bit my daughter's foot stuck around long enough for a cell phone selfie, standing its ground, none too pleased to be almost stepped on, which is how they eventually determined it wasn't a rattler. Though I didn't know that at the time, racing across half of Pennsylvania in the pre-dawn night with the only best case scenario I could think of. She'll only lose her foot. That had inflated to almost twice its size, each hour's swelling marked with a paramedic Sharpie, a topo map of toxins. But it was a copperhead's bite, so that was the worst of it. And by the time I arrived at the hospital, the anti-venom, freshly flown in from the zoo, had begun to cull the swell. So hooray for modern medicine, and for hospitals that write off exotic expenses, and for the taxpayers that absorb the cost, and for the snake that gave my daughter a reputation for toughness she carried the rest of the school year, and a story that's good for a lifetime. That snake that lay like a dark ribbon in the rocky shadows, though nothing like a snake plant, which looks more like green lasagna when you think about it. I'll just read two more. This is self-portrait is ukiyo-e, which ukiyo-e are the Japanese prints of in the 18th, 19th century. Often they were prints, the Wave by Hiroshige is probably the most famous one. And the thing about the ukiyo-e is they were representing the floating world, the idea of the ephemeral nature of existence. So this is self-portrait as ukiyo-e. Not the actor blanched in makeup, fleshed in colorful robes, white face twisted, his eyes screwed up, mouth turned down, hair all glamorous knots. All his characters' urgency, a warrior's honor and self-destruction conveyed in two fists gripping a sword, fingernails perfectly cut. Not the samurai who back arched, hovers over the courtesan, his stern erection hesitating, her kimono in legs thrown wide, toes twisting, her head turned aside to compose the poem she will send to her lover, apologizing for missing their appointed meeting. Not the fisherman's wife, who lies back in actual delight because the pleasure is solely hers, not the octopus who gazes on her face from across the shelf of her belly, his beak mouth skillfully playing the keynote of her joy, not his friend to the side adjusting his tentacle cups to caress with care her flattened breasts, not the clawed wave crushing a boat with the weight of a mountain. Not the bluebird on a red maple branch, hiragana song notes rising to the clouds. Maybe the grasshopper, pulling itself over the crest of a persimmon, the flat, full moon rising behind. That's it, the shadow of an insect, darkening the fruit. And with perhaps some more lighthearted poems, although I guess they're all light. This is when the pandemic allowed us to travel, we got a chance to travel to Europe, and oddly enough, ended up in Trier, Germany, which is a wonderful town in the Mosel Valley, great wines, which also, we went there because there are Roman ruins there, which are amazing, and many of them very intact, but also it is the birthplace of Karl Marx. So his house where he was born, only lived there for 6 months before they moved to a different house, is now a museum. So this is at the Karl Marx house in Trier. Karl didn't live here long, maybe a year before his father packed the family off for better digs near the Porta Negra, the ancient Roman gate. Christianized, emancipated Jew, lawyer for the government, he was far from loved by all, but he sent his son to university to follow in his footsteps. Karl had different plans, most of which were thoroughly unplanned. Chaste until he was stateless, Marx balanced his life in London between the bourgeois pleasures of brandy and cigars and poverty. Seizing control of the means of production is no mean feat when you depend on an allowance from a manufacturer's son and what little cash your newspaper columns bring home. So he hid in the British Library, buried in all the evidence he needed to prove what was plainly obvious to the proletariat. Once he convinced the proletariat of what they truly were, the proletariat. After that, the revolution would neatly fall into place. In the meantime, fine clothes for Jenny and plenty of brandy and cigars. You can listen to the voice of Marx emanating from a speaker in his dusty wing chair, expound on all of his theories and memories. You can drift around the crevice garden behind the house and gaze on his many statues. In the gift shop, large and tiny bearded busts of Marx in many colors glare down from the shelf. For €3, you can buy a €0 souvenir banknote engraved with the revolutionary's face. Imagine, what must Marx think? After all that work, demystifying capital's machine. Ah, to become a commodity fetish in the very house you were born.
I'm Wren Tuatha, and I now have a guitar pick.
Rock on.
Yeah, exactly. I just couldn't pass it by, other than walking to here. So my book is Thistle and Brilliant, and when I was laying out all my poems on the rug to see what threads were coming up for my collection, what came together was relationships in motion. Not let me count the ways and all that dribble, but more the messy stuff. Coming into and out of, not always at the same time as the other person or people in the relationship or ships. But anyway, it came together as Thistle and Brilliant. And it's available back there at the table when we're done. I'm going to do maybe 3 pieces from Thistle and Brilliant, and then I want to play with some new things that I've been doing that I'm very excited about. So this first piece is for all of the caregivers out there. This is called Cornbread. Cotton takes care of me. I mend and wonder where a word went as Cotton hops out of bed, feeds the herd, showers. I'm late with his coffee. I've got one job as he capers around, clipboards and clients' keys, leash and a dog to walk. My hours pass in whiplash and molasses. I'm glad he's at work, not watching. We both recall when I was brilliant. He soldiers and I try. Who takes care of Cotton? He's aged out of his market. Once 6 figures, now Cotton cleans houses. 5 today, done at 6. Home at 7 with rags to wash and stories, spreadsheets and payroll, menu ideas and shopping lists, leash and a dog to walk. Cotton cares into the void. Tonight, he'll make cornbread. So I haven't had a chance to look, but I think this one is featured today on Autumn Sky Poetry Daily, who's doing a promotion that they every Saturday they feature a book, and Thistle and Brilliant is today's book. I haven't had a chance to check, but that's what the email said. This is Sketches of the Falling Away. Words are thin. Don't paper me at midnight when the truth is you're leaving. Don't start a fight to make the leaving right. Keep me in your eyes instead, cunning, murky, devoted. Where your eyes land, I am the shard of want, the fabric in your grasping hand. You wear me, and no change of season has you peeling me back. You travel to find what I am not. You take me. These are the things falling away. Quickness in our pulses, sympathy of our eyes for each other, dances without obvious music. This is my skin, continuous with only itself. My room, a box of stillness and furniture that knew you. Breath comes like the turning of a motor with all the oil burned off. There's no way the next one could be better. Yeah. So you know how sometimes you're hiking and you pass this outcropping of rocks and you hear voices. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, you do. Trust me, you do. So this is Big Talking Rocks. I'm moving the muscles to breathe in cold water. They feel like bone in the effort. We had the same brand of toothpaste on the night we didn't speak of the dimming between us. Snow that doesn't stay. You kissed me poetically, pulled a story out of me like a magician's scarf, red, then yellow through my throat. I undressed to expose skin printed with stories I should have withheld. Psychic tattoos with ink so shiny you were afraid to touch and be branded. I'm moving muscles to speak of big talking rocks, monoliths like grandmother trees who have stories whispered in radio waves because they stayed. They speak in hugging colors and purring hum smiles because they watched while mammoths, raccoons, wrens, and Americans skittered in circles, never avoiding their fate. Their muscles made them do it, while big talking rocks wrote the mythology of staying long enough for restlessness to have its season. I brought the toothpaste you use. Season of snow that sticks. So this piece is kind of a transition between that kind of poem and these ones. I've been, when I went to my MFA program after I survived a California wildfire, I was writing about the wildfire and the intersection of that and racism and just leading me to deal with my ancestors in Kentucky who owned people and just all this terribleness that I couldn't resolve. I invented for myself a little poetic hiding place in some nonsense poems that I would write, psychedelic little ditties trying to avoid meaning, if at all possible, which I found is harder than it sounds. But just thinking of words as brush strokes of paint or pieces of clay and abstract things, And so I wrote several of them. This first one is, like I said, more of a transition. It's going to appear soon in the Moon Park Review. Tongues. Timothy Pond has written more poems about tea than she has about her partner. Tongues and more tongues, warmth and more warmth, morning blankets and feeling a slow wave of change on the inside. Her partner does the weekly shopping, gingerly replacing every kind of tea as it goes empty, a driving sacrament that takes her to 4 different stores, pouring herself into Timothy Pond, cup by cup, unnoticed osmosis. Her partner tinks a spoon in her own cup, something with cinnamon and milk, wire spectacles and a tidy ponytail. Her honey-do list, an ocean of minutes. Count their days in cups and pages and warm. As Timothy Pond poems and neglects, her partner laughs and accepts. That's your world, more real than the real world. And Timothy Pond submerges again, tannins collecting on the bottom, and keystrokes like rain on the roof. So this next one is more of a roller coaster. Try not to find a story. Just sort of, relax and imagine that you have just ingested whatever the Beatles ingested when they wrote things like I Am the Walrus and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and just enjoy the ride. Timothy Pond likes the Staten Island Ferry. Timothy Pond has her own oranges. Since she can't eat them, she rolls them downhill. Surprised, she's not surprised by physics. True to form, all the oranges have walked away by the time she arrives to retrieve, admonish, paint them. Tablespoon vortex. That moment when words become leaves, waving and tactile, mute, and trapped in shape. That's your guide to the whole thing, so I'll just say it again. That moment when words become leaves, waving and tactile, mute and trapped in shape. She thinks about how we got here. A day in the Pleistocene when being became contingent on meaning. Then at some point, prunes individually wrapped in plastic, the day all hope was lost. I have a brown jade money frog I got in Chinatown. It's got a dragon coin propped in its carved mouth to attract wealth. I'm supposed to point it toward the door when I go out and pivot it back to the room when I come home, or the reverse, but I don't. Timothy Pond likes the Staten Island Ferry because it's orange and a free ride out of Manhattan. She totes a canteen everywhere she goes. Then again, everyone who's living does. Hers being orange like the ferry and tubular like intestines or tunnels for going in the age of getting somewhere. Spiny bluegills and sneezes. That neighbor kid, Vanilla always made her sneeze. Your cat sneezes. I sometimes think your cat could balance the earth on the peak of her disapproving left ear. Once David Seeley and his daughter capsized their little boat and got rescued by the Staten Island Ferry. Someone stood on the Statue of Liberty side making snapshots of the extraction, because that's something you don't see every day. So I'm making my plan here. Okay. This is one of my favorites. 3 of 5. Timothy Pond finds 3 of 5 things. She has to scan the entire list over and over because she doesn't have a pen to do cross-outs. Socks. AAA batteries. pens, tablespoons, and tea. The cashier speaks. Did you find everything you need? And our poet falls into a dream. Seashells and curtain rings, Amelia Earhart pulling back the clouds to expose a sky of lost things. A duck named Megan who flew away during a fire. Atlantis, odd socks, space probes, access to education. The Anasazi, most of Sappho's poems, the greatest healthcare in the world. Every named or unnamed wife whose fate is unknown to Wikipedia. And a clutch of mismatched tablespoons, which, let's be honest, are hiding from Timothy Pond's cooking. I want to do one just like actual poem, other than these hybrid pieces. I want to do this one actual poem in honor of the Derby, which is today, the Kentucky Derby, from the state of Finishing Line Press, and also my home state. This is inspired by my childhood. It's called Untethered. Blame it or praise it, there's no denying the wild horse in us, Virginia Woolf. To be caught in the woods, his sense of place. He had the smoothest canter of all the ponies, like that moment a plane untethers from pavement. The Palomino Dodge could see girl me, lead in hand, would lead me to the trees. I was quick and right with the halter. He let himself be led to the mounting block, Pap watching. Dodge knew what I wanted, to gallop up and down the avenue, a field, not a road, until my thighs were sore from holding on. I dovetailed to every twitch of skin and shift of hoof, every witnessing tree. It's a peregrine ribbon, planet Zephyr, muscles and saddle becoming chimera, violin string veins painting the jet stream. Dodge, day moon squall, would veer at full tilt for the trees that lined the avenue and wipe me off, hard hit to the ground. Always get back on. I knew the light and dark of this, colonial, cowboy, suffragette hand-me-down, as if grown girl me would be barred from rodeos and legislatures. So much depends. The race to be untethered. What did girl me want to be? Senator of thickets and notebooks, stag of the ribbon way. Awoke to galloping out my window, jumped to see where Dodge was heading, called out to Pat, Dodge is free! But no pony was on the path, just bluegrass and birdsong. They found the Palomino, legs up in the woods, his rest, his place, his choosing. Okay, one more little bit of nonsense, and then I'm done. This is visceral pivot. Fabric of alphabet and blind associations. You walk sideways due to magnets, shoe magnets, and true food. Trowel widget and bank shot rummy. I would if birds, Elizabeth. I would if bones would just stop. Banksy tanks drill on a windowsill. I would if I could. Pastoral of a sky balloon. Adipose, lyric theory. Nikki Haley experienced so much racism as a little brown girl in South Carolina that now she assures white America we're not a racist country. She's not mad. The strainer, maintainer, and complaining entertainer. Beware the overshare. Spiderweb earrings, marble tabby, marble dawn.
Thanks everybody for coming. We have books for sale, finishing line press books for sale on the table in the back.